Hello, everybody. First off, I want to say thank you to Aquashella and thank you for you people being here to listen to this. My name is Ben Johnson. I've been in the industry since 1995 professionally. I started my career in Denton, Texas at a place called Fish and Chirps Pet Center. Anyone familiar with that? Anyone in here from Denton? Woohoo! I have worked in many different stores since I started this business. I started this business in 2002 in Houston, Texas, while I worked as a zookeeper at the Houston Zoo. Started it in 2002, and I left in 2004 because I was actually getting paid the same amount in my maintenance company as I was at the zoo, which isn't hard because the zoo doesn't pay that much. I have a podcast. Me and Richard Ross co-host a podcast called Reef Beef. Anyone in here actually listen to it? Hopefully. You do? Oh, you're awesome. You did what? Here, you get a shower curtain with Jeff Goldblum and a chimpanzee on it. Yeah. That was just meant for her. But anyways, Reef Beef, check it out. We do curse a little bit on it, but we don't do it egregiously. Richard Ross, if anyone knows who that is, and me and him just talking about aquarium stuff. And the way we started it was just like at a MACNA in the bar when it's over, how we speak to each other just about stuff, just speaking frankly. So check it out, please, if you can. I'm going to run through a couple slides of some of my work. Sanjay. Stuff that I do. These are current client tanks. These are some of the things that I set up and I maintain in Houston. Freshwater tanks, saltwater tanks. I don't know how much the light bleeds that out. All right. So my talk is about starting a maintenance company. So getting started, my career was that I started doing this when I was 16. It was like my first job ever. So I sort of feel like that is, I don't know about the easier route, but the more natural route, where you just work at a fish store for however long. You go from this fish store to this maintenance company. I don't know that that's how a lot of people get started, because some people come into this when they're older. So you're either starting young or you're starting old. I think starting younger is better because you gain all that knowledge and you're learning on someone else's dime all that time until you get the confidence to start off on your own. It would be more interesting if someone had a certain job for this whole time and then they started off as older. They might have more capital to start doing this, but that could be tricky. So hey, if you were young enough to figure out you wanted to do this, from the get-go, start younger rather than older and learn on someone else's dime. This is not what I did in the beginning, but I would seriously at this point recommend the first thing you do would be to contact a CPA, because I think a lot of people like work at a fish store and then they transition to, they leave the fish store or whatever just on the side that they're carrying buckets around and doing all this stuff, which is fine. That's how I started. But there's a lot to be said to trying to be as legit as possible, as fast as possible. Contacting a CPA to, figuring out how to structure your business, whether you're going to be a DBA, a LLC, S corporation, whatever you're doing. Obviously, you're starting off small, so you would start small. But you need a CPA in the very beginning to help you jump right off on the right foot. What sort of accounting software you're going to use and how you should operate it. I use QuickBooks Online on my phone, and it helps me a lot. Type of business, the accounting software. Sales tax is a big thing, and I'll be honest with you, and I can say this because it was a long time ago, but I didn't understand the whole sales tax thing when I started this, which that can land you into trouble in the beginning if you don't start off on the right legitimate foot. Because, and I guess I can't say this authoritatively as if I'm an accountant, but federal taxes, of course the IRS will come after you. I've always been told that state tax people will come at you a lot faster if you're not paying them. But it's important to understand, like in the beginning, if you're only grossing so much, you're probably only going to have to pay yearly. But as you go down the road, you start grossing more, you have to pay on the 20th of each month. So you know, if you in the beginning and you're just operating on a wing and a prayer, and that's cool because I think that's how a lot of us started. However, I still stress the thing to be get as legit as possible, as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're just another jerk with buckets, and it's easy come, easy go. There's things about sales tax, like here's a shocker, and I know this applies to Texas, but if you're from another place, you're going to have to figure this out. I had to call the state comptroller and talk to him about, because I always thought labor is not taxable, and labor as it pertains to an aquarium, it is taxable. So if you ever run into the thing where the state, audits you and they figure out you're not collecting tax that they feel is due, that's going to be a big slip up. So realize that labor on cleaning a tank is taxable. And I guess the default position is that just collect sales tax and send it to them. And if you find out you weren't supposed to later, at least you don't owe anyone money. But the reason they had that labor is taxable for doing aquarium maintenance is they consider it a fixture of the house. It's not like they brought you their car or anything, that you go into their house and it's a part of their house. So you have to, because I still get, when I do maintenance for other business owners, they will say, oh, hey, take the tax off of the labor. And I'm like, I've been doing this like 25 years. Yeah, I had to collect tax on this. It is funny on sales tax because it's like a carrot and the stick thing. And if you pay on time, it's like $5 off. And if you pay late, it's like an $80 fee. So don't pay late on stuff like that. Here's another thing that I didn't do in the beginning that I think if I could have gone back, I would have done this as soon as possible. And it doesn't occur to you as you make this, but general liability insurance. So I'm part commercial clients and part residential clients, and I'm going into people's houses and business that, their income just far exceeds mine. And if I mess something up, sure, they have their own like building or house insurance, but you've got to cover your butt. Because again, man, and I say this as, people that I come up against that are competitors and that they don't even pay tax and they don't have general liability insurance. It's like, I just don't really worry about them because again, that's easy come, easy go. And for that longevity and the legitimacy, my general liability insurance, I'll just be frank with you all, I have $2 million aggregate policy. It costs me about $900 a year. They allow you to pay it out or you can pay it in one lump sum. Also, hey, going back to when you're structuring your company, that's why you may think about being an LLC, because that separates your personal assets from your business assets, and that sort of works hand in hand with the general liability insurance. If you flood a tank in a house and they want to come sue you and you're an LLC, they can only take your business assets and they can't come take your house or your car and stuff like that. Obviously, the goal is don't screw stuff up, but, the world isn't perfect. Okay, how to land clients. This can be tricky, especially if you're old or young and you're not sure what to do here. But one of the methods I did in the beginning, I don't do anymore, is cold calling. You print out a bunch of cards and you go all throughout your town and you just hand out cards. After 20-something years of doing this, I can tell you sort of had to be choosy. You can't just pick the strip and the thing and just go hand out cards to everyone. You have to think before you walk into a business, is this a business that would likely even do this anyways? I'll tell you a couple things like avoid franchises. Like I'm not going to walk into a franchise and say, hey, do you guys want an aquarium for the lobby? That's not really their decision so much. And, in order to get that, that's something you could do much later if you were granted an audience with the CEO or something, but any of that's highly unlikely. Just stay away from franchises. Restaurants, personally, I don't really find they operate on a small profit, and so I usually stay clear of that. I'm trying to look at medical clinics and law offices and maybe manufacturing places and stuff like that. Let's see, that's cold calling. Let me give you an example real quick of cold call when I did it, because if I come up off the street and I go into a dentist office and I'm trying to pass out a card, realize they don't want you there. You're not a customer, so Whatever you say, you better say it quickly and just get out. Because, and I don't mean to be so negative, they're probably going to throw your card in the trash anyways. This cold calling doesn't really turn over that many customers. But if I would go in, I'd wait patiently in line if someone was in front of me. And when I get to the receptionist, they don't want to know your name. They don't want to know your company name. It's just, hey, I install and maintain custom aquariums. Here's a card if the doctor is interested. Thank you. Bye. That any more than that, and they already don't even want you there. So just be careful with cold calling. And again, like I said, usually when you leave, I just assume it's thrown in the trash. It's never been really effective for me. There's an app called Thumbtack that I use a lot. And when it first started, it was a lot of garbage, and you could poke a lot of holes in it. But it's like a lead generator. And I didn't like it at first because it sort of brings in a lower common denominator type client. Whereas, as you saw, like I do higher end things. But again, and let me impress this upon anyone that's considering doing this for a business, because remember, you are a business. You're sort of doing this for fun, but this is a business. So that's why, when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, I want to do saltwater only. It's my opinion, if you're doing a maintenance company, I would clean someone's toilet bowl as long as they're meeting my minimum hourly rate that I tell them. I don't care if it's freshwater, saltwater, but again, I've been doing this for a long time and I know all that stuff real well. But so Thumbtack is this lead generator, and you put in the amount of money that you want to sort of bid to, to bend someone's ear to find you. And I'll tell you, if you're using that in the beginning, it's going to seem like it sucks real bad because you're just getting crappy leads and you feel like you're throwing money out the window. But I charge so much per hourly rate to do my thing. You land a couple clients and it's basically already paid for itself for a couple years. And the thing that I found out, which it sounds like I'm doing a Thumbtack commercial, but it's very true, because in the beginning you don't want to pledge too much to generate a lead. But I'm serious, the more you pledge, you start getting better possibilities. And all you have to do is land a couple of them, and whatever you do the rest of the year is pretty much going to be paid for. So don't be shy of stuff like Thumbtack. I think, like a decade or more so ago, there was other lead generators, but you would spend so much more on those things. Thumbtack's generally pretty cheap. Obviously, there's Google and your website. Just do a cheap website, unless you're selling stuff, and then you'd have to have a cart and all that. But just do an easy, simple website. I mean, nowadays, and it's been this way for a long time, you can make your own website. You don't have to be a graphic designer or anything like that. I think, too, as a small business owner, I would tell you, when you first start this venture and you think, oh, I want to have graphics on my car, I want to have this crazy website, I want to do this, and I got to get general liability insurance, I got to hire a CPA. Don't spend too much money up front, because it takes a lot of slogging to get somewhere, unless you're already independently wealthy, and then I would ask you, why are you cleaning aquariums anyways? But be real frugal in the beginning, and then get these things when you need them. Google's crazy. I've tried to do AdSense myself. Now, I'll be the first one to admit I'm not some Google AdSense wizard. So you have to be careful with stuff like that, because on your marketing, you can end up spending a lot of money, a lot more money than you have. So be careful with that. If you know Google AdSense real well, that's sort of an ace in your pocket. But, trying to figure out the logarithm for coming up quick on Google can be a lot of money thrown at it. Social media is a crazy thing, because I used to more in the past go on Instagram and post pictures of the work that I was doing, and you got to hashtag the hell out of it, and think of every hashtag, and you got to push it. It didn't take I've been doing that, sitting in bed doing that for like a year, and for many reasons, you're not getting much turnover of a client that's going to spend money with you to farting around on social media. Honestly, it ends up being more for your ego. Now, the people that sell coral frags and stuff like that, that's great for them. That works for them, to turn people looking at a picture of a coral into some money in your pocket. But after doing this for so long, I'll tell you that the type of clientele that I'm gearing for doesn't generally sit around and look at social media. These are, oil company owners and doctors, and sure, they look at pictures of their kids on social media, but you're not going to get a high turnover. So if you're messing around too much on social media, that might be a thing where you're sort of barking up the wrong tree. Poaching. Poaching is if you worked at this, you worked at some store for like a couple of years doing maintenance or whatever, and you're like, oh, I know their clientele. And then you quit that place and do that. I guess I'm partial to this as a business owner, but I would tell you that poaching isn't cool. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but I also don't see how you could derive that much pleasure from sort of stealing someone else's stuff. I'm just saying, it seems like some of this stuff is karmic. And so if you start off by poaching someone's clients where you used to work, it just feels like that's bad juju, and you should go out and earn all this stuff yourself. Now, if someone else's client calls me, then hey, that's neither here nor there. That's my client now. The thing is, like when you're cold calling and you may go in somewhere where they already have an aquarium, what I would do in that case, I don't consider it poaching, but I would just at least, oh, hey, I see you have an aquarium. Here's my card. If these people don't ever do right by you, hey, give me a call. That's fair right there. Part of poaching that I think is gross too is undercutting, because you think, oh, I'm going to get this client. How much are they charging you? Okay, I'm going to charge half less. To be honest with you, you're messing yourself up by doing that. Because once you do what I do, you drive around in the heat or whatever it is, carry buckets around, hoses, all the stuff you have to do, and you realize you're undercutting someone to get something at the end of the day, and you're frustrated because, and then imagine trying to march that number back up if you keep that client. Just undercutting is cheap and poaching is cheap. This is actually a really effective way. And a lot of people that do what I do, that I talk to, that sometimes ask me for advice, when I hear what they're asking me, it's funny because sometimes I hear people asking me, like, how do I find people? And I sort of find out that they're sort of they're trying to gain the ear of hobbyists. I don't clean hobbyists' aquarium. I have a group of customers that I call pseudo-hobbyists, which were hobbyists that they get frustrated in what they were doing, and then they call me in, and then they're like, okay, you can do it. You know better than what you're doing than I am, so there you go. Versus my top-tier clients are just wealthy people that want this thing that they saw. They don't know anything about it, and they want me to maintain it. That's sort of my favorite type of client. But when you're trying to drum up clients for your little business, you got to get your mindset out of that. You think you're trying to target hobbyists or target all this stuff. You're not targeting hobbyists. Hobbyists are going to try to do their own stuff. So a really good way to try to find this: home and garden shows, boat shows, cigar shows, which sounds crazy, but what you were trying to do is target people that have money. Go to the events and the shows that have nothing to do with aquariums. As if I think I could drum up clients in here, maybe a few, but you go to a cigar show or a boat show or a home and garden show, set up a little booth, set up a little aquarium, have pamphlets, brochures, an iPad where you can show people your pictures, and do that. Target wealthy people, because that's the clientele that you want, not someone that's going to argue about protein skimmers with you. How to be around clients. This is tricky, and this, maybe you got it right off the bat, or maybe it takes a long time to learn how to be around people. That's sort of why I say it's best to start off young and work in stores and know how to deal with retail and grumpy people and, work through problems and all that. But maybe if you're an older person trying to jump into aquarium maintenance, maybe you're well-versed in dealing with people. Dealing with people is not always easy, as we all know. And sometimes you get difficult people, but you realize when you're a business, how to be around your clients. You got to suppress your own emotions about things, especially if you want to argue with them about stuff. I say that you have to bottle some of that up inside, let them be right most of the time. And if you don't like the thing that went down that y'all are arguing about, just make plans to maybe cut that client. But just don't ever argue with your own clients. And I don't even know why I have to say this, but if a client texts you and you engage in a text argument, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that for many reasons, but don't ever do that because pictures of that text go on Facebook or Yelp, and people said, hey, look, this guy called me an a-hole, blah, blah, blah. And you're cutting your own throat. The worst thing that I will ever say to a client in the worst scenario possible is just, sorry, I couldn't meet your needs. Thank you. Don't say anything worse than that. Because your reputation is hard won. And as much as you make 10 people happy, that one person that you pissed off is just going to be far worse. It's going to have far more impact than the 10 people you made happy. When I'm in clients' houses, act like you're on camera, because you probably are. I have a thing that I sort of developed in my head over the years that was sort of hard for me to wrap my head around, but when you go into someone's house, just pretend like you're being filmed constantly, because that will change the way you act. You know, if you go to the refrigerator to grab a beer, or you sit down and watch cable TV. I know aquarium maintenance people that have been fired for doing these things. Take too much liberty in someone's house. Don't assume anything. Ask them if you can use the restroom. You're in someone's house, and if you don't come correct like that, you're just not going to have a long experience in that. I have a quick story. I started in the Dallas area, and now I'm in Houston. But this was sort of more rare in the 90s. I was cleaning a guy's aquarium here in Dallas, and he had cameras in his house at that time. I think it was 1998. And I would clean his aquarium. But this time I was in a rush, so I had 3 buckets to change, but I needed them for another client. So I ended up only changing 1 bucket. I'm almost done. The guy calls me. I'm like, oh, yes. And he's like, how much water did you change? And I said, I changed 3 buckets. And he said, no, you only changed 1. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, look in the bookshelf. And I look in the bookshelf, and there's a camera. And I was like, okay. And so he called my boss and didn't want me over there anymore. So again, just act like you're being filmed, because you probably are. This sounds pretty obvious, but always carry a towel on your shoulder. Again, you might be in a $5 million house or a commercial place, and you spill water. I almost pay as much attention to possible spillage that I'm doing on the floor as what I'm doing to that aquarium. Because if I make the client slip, or I drop water on their white Berber carpet or on their floor, like, wipe up everything you see. You have to be super diligent, and that's not just, you think you're going to clean aquariums just because you're good at your home aquarium. And I'm telling you, all the other things that translate to you having longevity in this business has a lot to do that the attention that you pay to people's houses, and what you spilled, and how you talk to people, and all that kind of stuff. Never be unprofessional. I pretty much covered that. There we go. So I've been in business since 2004, all on my own. And I've gone through different, accounting programs for that. Don't ever let invoices stack up. I have done that in the past, and it's just so terrible. Just for whatever reason, you have ADD, or you're in the middle of switching over accounting software or anything. When you do the work, get that invoice to the person as fast as you can. Because I have so much experience with, like, oh crap, 6 months I haven't invoiced them. And you hand someone, you get fired for that. Not only you get fired for that, but then they're going to refuse to pay those 6 months of invoices and just fire you. So come hell or high water, do not let invoices stack up. Sounds obvious, but people do it. You hadn't invoiced them a while, and you come to them with $10,000 in invoices. How would you feel? I can't stress this enough in this business as well. Clear communication. When you get a client, whether there was a miscommunication about what you're doing, how you set the tank up, how they want you to be in their house, where they want you to put water, what is your policy for quarantine, what is your, any of these things. You have to be a really good communicator to people, because, you bring over fish and they die, and you hadn't really ever been clear about what your policy is on that. And then, again, you get fired for that because you don't want to, get them back for that fish, or whatever your policy is. Clear communication. Try to have a policy that you would give them when they become a client, of what your QT policy or what any of that policy is, so they all know up front. Client expectations. A lot of my clients are, again, like I said, just wealthy people that aren't hobbyists. So their expectations are like, oh man, do your thing and I'll write you a check and you just do your thing. That's mostly what I want. But like I told you earlier, where I have a group of clients that I kind of consider pseudo-hobbyists, where they will get a little involved in the aquarium, find out what their expectations are. What do you want me to do? Or do you want me to be the water change person? Or no, you'll handle that. You want me to do testing? You want me to just, be real clear about what you do? And then if they're fiddling with the tank, then ask them, be very specific about what they want you to do. Because again, this is a service industry, and if you're not doing what they wanted you to do, and you guys are both, too many chefs in the kitchen. If you're not clear about what you're doing, you get fired for that. Obviously, it's a business, you're trying to avoid getting fired. How much to charge? That's sort of tricky in the beginning. If you sometimes before I'd taken over clients' aquariums where someone was cleaning it before, and I get to see like an invoice. So this is just over the course of many, many years, seeing other people's invoices. What do they charge? Or maybe just, talking in the store. Hey, do you know what these people charge? And blah, blah, blah. And it changes and it shifts, obviously. But it's going to be tricky in the beginning. I think in the beginning, most people are not going to charge as much. But the longer you go down the road and you build a nice retinue of aquariums that look great and you do know what you're talking about, you have to incrementally raise your prices. And now the funny thing is, like, I have always sort of been this way, but where I'm at, I'm just a tiny company. I'm just a one-man show, but I've been in business for a long time too. I charge a lot, and I sort of delight when someone says to me, oh, that's kind of expensive. But that's how I weed out. I just know how much I want to make for getting out of my bed and going and do something and running around town. Just don't ever sell yourself short, because those scenarios never, you pitch to someone, oh, clean the tank will cost this much. Like, oh, well, I only want to pay this much. Maybe bend with the rules a little bit. If you see you could do that, that's fine. But be careful about shortchanging yourself. Because in the beginning, I can't tell you how many times I agreed to that, and then 6 months down the road, I'm cleaning an aquarium. I'm like, dude, this isn't worth it. Well, it's not the client's fault. It's your fault for agreeing to it. Don't agree to something that you know is not worth your time. Like I said, try to get a read on what other people are charging and figure out where you fit into that hierarchy. Look at their work and see, do you think in your head, of course, we're all going to say yes, but do you think you're better than them, or they're better than you? Or, try to price accordingly. You also go down the road a little bit, and if you get too many people denying you, oh, you're too expensive. Being too expensive is great, unless you're not landing any clients, and then it doesn't matter anything. You priced yourself out of the market. Here's a big thing with me. Don't say no to clients. When they say, oh, would you clean the this? I don't say, no, I don't clean that. I use a dollar amount. So I get this all the time from Thumbtack, which makes Thumbtack frustrating, because I set up $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 aquariums, but you get through Thumbtack and you're like, can you clean my $10 goldfish tank? And the people that do what I do, we sort of chuckle about that. Oh, yeah, as if. But you know what? I've had clients before that pay me $150 to clean a 10-gallon goldfish tank. Why not? Why not if they agree to it and that makes sense to them? Do it. This is a business. Your job is to take, no matter how much we like fiddling with aquariums, your job is to take your time and turn that into money and put it in the bank. Otherwise, why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to be a business? So don't say no to someone. Do it with money. Here's the thing I can say after many years of cleaning tanks, and invariably people contact you to move tanks. And then I hear of competitors that, oh, this guy was going to move it for this. Maybe if someone else is in the audience that does this for a living too, and they're like, oh, that's not true, but moving tanks is not as easy as you think it is. And I can come up with 100 different reasons of why it's so difficult. So when, I quote someone $1,200 for moving this tank, and he said, oh, this other guy gave me a quote for $600. Go let the other guy move it, because I've got insurance for this, and I don't know you first floor, second floor. I didn't set it up. What's your plumbing like? If it's a reef tank, are we in the middle of winter? Are we in the middle of summer? I'm possibly going to kill stuff. And then at the end of all this, you're supposed to give me $1,200, but you're going to withhold $300 because you said a blah, blah, blah. It's a minefield. Moving tanks is a minefield. It can be lucrative, but it's a literal minefield. So if, when you start getting calls for moving, relocating tanks, just be real careful. I'm serious. Don't look at it as like, oh, I'm not going to charge much. I'm going to get this. I'm going to move a tank. Charge a lot. And if they say no, then just move on. Like I said with how much you charge, like don't put yourself in a situation where you're thinking, why did I do this for this little amount of money? Charge a lot. It's a lot of work. In closing with this part, I would say, I think from the outside, aquarium maintenance looks super cool and super fun. And, oh, you got a cool job, a weird job. Just like every other job out there, it's a job and it's freaking hard. It's heavy and it's confusing. And there's a lot of stuff you have to figure out. And so like when I worked at the Houston Zoo, I worked in the Kipp Aquarium. And we would get interns in that, it was like young people that would say, I want to work with dolphins. I want to be a marine biologist. But I worked with real marine biologists. And they're sometimes grumpy people because they don't get paid much. And they thought they were going to work with dolphins. And it doesn't happen like that. And if you think that you're going to do aquarium maintenance because you're going to work on $50,000, $100,000 aquariums all day, it's not like that either. You may be working on stuff that you're not very fond of, but as long as you charge a rate that makes you happy, that's fine, that's lucrative. Take the money, do the job, go put it in the bank. You're not going to brag about every tank that you do. That's what also sort of gets me when I'm talking to people that do what I do and or want to do what I do, and they're like, I'm going to clean saltwater aquarium tanks only. Learn freshwater if you don't know them. Do freshwater, do ponds, do anything that you can capably do. And with that, I would put a caveat, is I think too, don't do something that you're not. Someone's talking about putting in a $50,000 pond, and you're like, oh, and you see dollar signs, but like, I don't know anything about ponds. I know this feels weird, but I'm saying sometimes you got to duck out of those situations, even though it feels like money on the table, before you get embroiled in something that you're not well versed in and you mess it all up. Go learn how to do that, and then come back to that next time someone wants to do something like that. Don't do something that you don't feel strongly about. I've done it before, and it will always bite you in the rear. But now I was hoping to field any questions. Anybody have any questions? I think this works like this. What's it?
At what age did you start your business?
16 years old. This was my first job. I'm 47 now. This was my first job ever. The only time I didn't do this was in my early 20s, where I did land surveying for a year and a half. And I decided that I wanted to be around aquariums again because land surveying sucks. Anyone else have any questions? Hey, since you asked me a question, even though you're young, and if you do happen to watch my podcast, make sure that Dad thinks it's okay that I'm saying MF for this and MF for that. Come on, someone's got questions. Ask me a stupid question. Yep, they're out there, and they come and go. I mean, like I said, I've had several of those. To be honest with you, I have a guy that paid me $150 a visit once every 4 weeks for 6 months to clean his beta bowl. But this was a guy that worked in like corporate America. It doesn't matter, and that's why I strongly say, someone contacts you in your aquarium maintenance company, and they say, oh, would you clean my beta bowl? Don't tell them no. Say, sir, my minimum price is $150. If you don't even say anything negative about it, like, oh, I know that's expensive, but don't. It's like if you're a salesman and you assume by the way someone's dressed when they come in or what they can buy or not buy. Don't ever do that. For like that situation or for any situation? Just for that guy? I charge a certain amount per my visit, how long I think it's going to take, per the hourly rate that I hit my head and how far it is and, where it's at logistically and this and that. But I don't like to get into the include too much stuff, because over the years, if I've done that, include food, include this, I'm cutting straight into my profit. And, and there's different, the higher up the food chain you go, everyone's got these cooler business ideas and to do this or that. But I just, again, clear communication. I just tell the people up front, look, this is my labor, and then every other, I call them peripheral items. All peripheral items will be extra. There'll be carbon, this, because some people are different. Some people want to know that their bill comes in and it's $300 a month. Now, if you start doing this roller coaster every time you go in there, you better have clear communication with them But you can't just drop stuff off and, oh, they need a new pump. And then he gets the bill and it's like, why is the bill $1,200? Communicate first. Always communicate. Clear communication will get you out of that backside where you're like, oh, I thought you wouldn't think it was a big deal. Oh, no, it's a big deal anytime I get a big invoice. And I wasn't expecting it. Even though I'll tell you from working around rich people my whole life, even though they are rich to you, it doesn't mean that they like to spend money anymore. Sometimes that's actually more difficult. And if you're trying to sell them something, you better not be trying to pull the wool over their eyes. It better be a legit thing, and you better have the reason why you want to change it or do it. Just like, boom, Johnny on the spot. Because I'll also tell you, these people too like a set of cojones when you're explaining stuff to them, and also display a knowledge of why I would do that and this and that. You know, if you're like, oh, I don't know, I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool to put $5,000 worth of lights above there. And they're like, that's not good enough, dude. And I hear people say, you know, oh, that guy's chintzy. And if I look into it more, I'm like, no, you didn't explain it very well. That's why. He's not chintzy. He just you didn't give him a good reason. What's that? A lot. What? Yeah. So his question was, what's the worst job I've ever had for, you know, the aquarium maintenance? I don't know, man. That's tricky because since 2004, it's a lot. I might find you later and like share a couple with you because there's just too many. You know, things where you agreed to something and then, I had tank moves where people shirked me on the rest of the money. I had a tank move where a guy was bragging about while I was moving his tank how he screwed over someone else business-wise. And I wasn't sort of reading the tea leaves. And what happened at the end of the move? He screwed me on the move. I was like, oh, you were telling me you were going to screw me. Okay. Shame on me for, you know, I guess I could circle back to something like as a real business, if someone like calls and they want to do an aquarium and then you go talk to them, you know, you have to set up your own policies and sort of model it after other businesses that you know. If I get someone agree to okay, yeah, they want to do a $20,000 aquarium, get half down. Half down makes me start. Half down makes me start ordering. Put it in a written contract. I don't care if it's cheesy and you printed it up. Just get it on a contract, get them to sign it that they give you half down. Now, again, with clear communication, half down to make me start, the other half upon completion. Be clear about what completion is. What does completion mean? Spell out exactly what completion means. Because in the past, I've gotten screwed over by I wasn't clear what completion meant. And then they thought it meant that there was fish in there. I meant that there was water in there running. There's no leaks. And then they're not giving you their money. And then the deal goes sour. And then you got to be clear in what expectations. It's one of the most important things in doing probably any business is just clear communication about what they expect and what you're going to do when you're going to do it. And the clearer you are on that side, the less you get screwed over on the other side.
Do you have a standard markup for things at
20%? So his question is there like a standard markup on stuff? And that's been a long road for me too. And you have to be careful with that. So like I told you, most of my clientele are people that aren't really hobbyists. But today, let's be honest, we live in an internet age where if I tell you I'm going to get you a skimmer, and then I tell you the exact spec of the skimmer, whether you know anything about aquariums or not, you can take that info and go online and just look at what I told you. And then if I quoted you on the quote of I'm going to sell you this Reef octopus skimmer for $1,200, and you look it up and you can get it for $699, there's a little bit of sludge factor in there. Like, okay, fair enough, I can get it online for $600, but you're selling it to me for $700, $800. First of all, you're getting it wholesale, so at the $600, you're already making money, but a little over, and then that's easy to explain. Hey, you didn't even know what it was. You didn't know the right one to pick. I took my time at my home to pick it out. When I got to clean it, when I got to service it, when I got to call the people who make it and do this, it's a little bit of sludge factor. But you charge something like $1,200, that gets into where it's like, dude, you're price gouging. And I'll tell you, this almost feels weird for me to say, but this is just the honest truth in business, is if you ask me for you want to do an aquarium and I'm giving you an estimate, I don't say Reef octopus, blah, blah, 3.5 XL, blah, blah, blah. I don't do that. I say protein skimmer. Now, in my books at home, I've written down which one I want to use. If you want to know what protein skimmer I'm talking about on my estimate, you could certainly ask me. But again, my clientele are not into that. So they just see protein skimmer. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm overcharging people for stuff, but I am a business. I have to make money. If you don't like how I make money, why are you even talking to me? I have to make money. It's funny, all of us, I guess I consider myself an old timer in this industry. All of us, it's like, we're just people that couldn't get away from this hobby, Mark. We're just people that couldn't get away from this. And we spend all our time, trying to make sure I want to work in this industry until I die. And it's not the easiest industry to always make money in. So you got to do what you got to do. Good. I like this. People were shy at first, but.
What is the worst investment you've ever made in a product for a tank?
What's the what?
Worst investment you've ever made for a product on a tank.
Oh, that's a lot too. That sort of goes with experience. So I think most people heard, but what's the worst and best investment, whatever. Like, I've been doing this since I was 16, so I know, the equipment, and I'm obsessed with it. I look at it in catalogs. Like, I go to trade shows. I put my hands on stuff. What do I think about Seche? What do I think about this? Are these canisters any good? Do I like Fluval? Do I like Eheim? Who makes good skimmers? All that stuff. Again, that's what I always say. That's hard-won experience. And that's why I would be afraid to start off right off the bat and not know much about. I know my home tank, so I'm going to go clean aquariums now because I have a good home tank. Like, to be honest with you, how much do you know about the width and breadth of all that equipment out there? It's an important thing to know because you convince someone to do a $20,000 aquarium and then you go home and you're like, wow, I don't know what to put on here. And it's okay. You call your buddies. You have buddies that are more experienced. You're like, hey, man, I just sold this guy this big expensive deal, but what skimmer would you put on there? No one has to know how you make the bread. No one has to know how you got them the good thing. But if you're doing stuff you're not sure about, do your due diligence to when you do install that stuff, you have come correct and you have put good, legitimate stuff on there. Worst and best investment, I don't know. That'd be sort of like calling out people that are on the floor. But there's equipment that works good, equipment that works bad, and you just learn that through experience. Companies you like, companies you don't like. I tried to head off worst experiences just by using stuff that I know is good, Here's an example. Is recently I used a Seachem skimmer because they came out with this new skimmer, and I was sort of worried because Seachem doesn't make skimmers, but they've recently been branching out. It's a pretty good skimmer. I took a little gamble on that, but then again, I have a lot of hard-won wisdom with working with stuff. I saw what pump that they had on there, and I saw how they have the effluent come out into a filter sock and this and that. Now, after being around it, it's pretty cool. There's other skimmers I could have used. I'm happy I put it on there. I'm happy with it. But if people think, here's a thing I didn't cover, was using your clients as a guinea pig. You can't really do that. But I would also say in the beginning, when you're first starting to do this, you might not know much about all the equipment that's out there. So then you would see, oh, Bubble King. I've always wanted to put on a Bubble King. And you convince someone to put a Bubble King on their tank. And then, you don't know much about it or how to, and you'd go down the road and you'd be like, oh, damn, I don't even like this thing. I mean, get some knowledge. That's why I tell even people trying to do what I do, go to trade shows and talk to the manufacturers and put your hands on it and turn it and ask, hey, what do you think about that thing, And get knowledge about the equipment. All that's hard won. And that, again, that'd be scary for me in the beginning. I think someone else raised their hand too. I love you too. This is fun. I get to work out while I'm talking.
Have you ever lost a client because they got into the hobby?
Because they got in the hobby and wanted to take it over? So that's a cool question. I like the question. So have you ever lost a client? I don't sort of consider that a loss. And again, I'm a business, so whatever I got to do to put money in the bank is what I'm going to do, including selling my body. But so I've had clients before where it's only like a temporary gig where they're like, man, I want to be a hobbyist. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've been to 5 different stores. They've told me 10 different things. I'm more confused than when I started. So then I'll do consultation. Man, I love consultation because it's just me frickin' talking for money. And I can do that all damn day. But so then I'll do consultation. And then within 1 hour, man, if you don't know shit about shit, I can get you there real fast. We can write down where I'd buy stuff from, what I'd use, all that. And I might charge like $150 an hour for me talking, but I've saved you thousands of dollars in years off of what you're doing. But I'll get those clients. And then sometimes they'll be like, still, I want you to clean it for like 6 months and then walk away. And I tell the people, because the funny thing is, if they have a good job, they're making good money, 6 months comes up and they're just like, oh, I'm busy, man. You just keep doing that. It doesn't often happen. Now, it only happens if you're good. If you suck, yes, people are going to walk away from you. If you charge too much, yet you suck, people are going to walk away from you. Have I ever had in 20-something years me doing a good job on someone's tank and them just like, oh, I'm going to do it myself? I don't think really. Maybe one time. And then the dude called me back a year later, and then I charged more than what I was then. Don't leave me. Anyone else? Anyone else? Does anyone, now that the room is more full, does anyone in here actually listen to Reef Beef? Damn it. Justin, you raised your hand too slow. Mark B. And he's even been on the show. You're next. Yeah, Mark, give me that. Give it to Sanjay. No, I can't be an Indian giver, but you're next on the show. All right, what time is it? 11:51. That's pretty good, but come on, more questions. I know y'all got questions. Ask me when I'm going to get off the stage. Everyone good? No more questions? Going once, going twice. All right, hey. Oh, right at the bell. He's like, "Who are you?"
Exactly what you do when you do service. You know, like you come in, you do water change, you do the algae or scraper or whatever.
Yeah. So the guy asked me, what do I do when I do service? And that can be different. It can be different. I do have one client right now that's actually done a damn good job doing his own tank. He is a busy, executive type guy. But he had me come in the beginning and do the dirty work, picking up buckets, moving around, doing water changes and all that. Over time, we got to talking, he realized I know more about this than he does. So instead, he started doing the dirty work, and he has me doing water testing and changing his probes and doing all that. But if you don't know anything, the core thing of what I do, and I'm a huge water change proponent. It is super popular out there. You get people trying to figure out how they can not do a water change. I personally don't agree with that. I think water changes are awesome. So I'd say my services sort of anchor around water changes. Also, I would tell you this from a business standpoint to a certain degree. If you're paying me money to clean your tank, seriously, you want to see me sweat. You want to see me having a hard time physically and mentally and busting my butt on your tank. And if I'm just coming in and wiping and doing a little test and thanks for the $300, and it's like, what did that guy do? So almost as a business, you're almost changing water, so they see you doing the due diligence. But I will tell you on the flip side, it's legit to change water. Changing water, I'm weird too. This is going to be weird advice. I don't test a lot, and that's a weird thing to admit. It depends what it is. It depends on what the system is. And this sounds so cliche, but I can tell you after doing this for 20-something years, I can't guess everything. But, I could walk up to your tank in whatever state of repair or disrepair it's in, and I can tell you have a nitrate problem. You probably have a phosphate problem. I can sort of tell you are you dosing? Oh, well, your alkalinity is probably low and your calcium's low. I can pretty much just sort of from repetition for so many years, sort of guess, because when I worked at the zoo, they had a laboratory in there, and I used a Hawk DR 5000, a real, accurate thing. And it's after being around accurate equipment, it's the more you know about water chemistry and testing and all that, test kits are really frustrating to me because you go through all this effort and time testing water, and what have you really done is try to find your way around in a room with a pen light. That's what hobbyist grade testing kits are trying to find your way out of a dark room with a pen light, at best. So the thing I don't like is going to a client's place and spending like 30 minutes testing stuff and, oh, I screwed that up, let me redo it. And then the meat and potatoes of what I do is changing out filter socks, cleaning the skimmer, changing water, cleaning the glass and stuff like that. But then, then I've been sitting around, farting around with testing water or messing with an apex and stuff like that. And I don't have any time left for what I was supposed to do. And you do have to keep track of your time too, because you start, you get a guy to agree that like $200 a visit. But if you look at a clock and you've been at his house for 3 hours, bro, you're not making money, enough money. Figure out what you're doing for the client. Figure it out for yourself, not just them. I guess I have it's not my saying, but there's a thing I always say. There's two things I'm trying to do for my clients. I'm trying to do the best job possible, and I'm trying to do it quickly as possible. I'm never trying to do it quicker over than doing a good job, but I'm trying to do a real good job really fast so I can move on to the next thing. Because I've had some competitors before where I've heard that, when I take a tank over and they're like, oh yeah, the guy used to be here for 4 hours. What are you doing there for 4 hours? And are you charging him $800? What are you doing? Do the good job and get out of there. So you have to be careful with how many things that you're doing when you do that. And if they're asking you to do a lot of things, charge accordingly, charge more. And then they may look at it and oh crap, that's more than I wanted to spend. Okay, well then you might want to do your own testing. You might want to mess with that apex on your own. I'll do all this stuff in the course of an hour. Or if you can justify me doing all of it, pay me for all of it, and I'll do all of it. But it's going to be expensive. It's up to you. That's also clear communication. So, did that answer your question more or less? Cool. Everyone good? Thank you, everyone, very much for listening to me. But this person has another question.
Do you have a booth?
Do I have what?
A booth.
I don't have a booth because that wouldn't do me anything, because I'm not trying to bend the ears of hobbyists. If this was millionaires in here buying cigars, I would have a booth. But I'm not going to have a booth in something like this where I'm arguing about what sort of pump to put on your tank, unless you're paying me for that time to argue with you about what I'm putting on your tank. It all revolves back around to I'm a business and you're going to pay me if I'm talking to you about stuff. But hey, thank you guys so much. If you can, check out Reef Beef. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Thank you.